Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are looking at something literally mind-bending. We're breaking down this groundbreaking new study out of the University of Sheffield, and it completely flips our entire understanding of aging, longevity, and cellular stress. Like, if you thought you knew how biology responds to a challenge, or what actually makes us resilient as we age, well, get ready, because this research, it changes absolutely everything we thought we knew.
Okay, let's dive into this. What if silencing your cell's stress signals is the secret to a longer life? Normally, we think of a little bit of stress as a good thing, right? It acts kind of like a workout for our bodies, building up that resilience. But what if, and this is a huge what if, turning off the alarm bells inside our cells is actually the real key to unlocking human longevity?
Before we get into the nitty-gritty biology of how that works, we really need to understand the incredibly high global stakes of this research, because this is huge. As Dr. Mir Simons from the University of Sheffield points out, quote, "One of the biggest societal risks we face is the demographic shift of an aging population. This will place a massive economic and care burden on future generations," end quote. So you see, this isn't just some vain pursuit of eternal youth for a few individuals. We are staring down a looming global economic and healthcare crisis. We absolutely desperately need a way to keep people healthier for much longer.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Aging Challenge. If we're actually going to realistically face this massive demographic shift, we need a solution that is incredibly scalable. And intervening at scale means targeting the aging process itself, rather than just individual diseases. Think about modern medicine for a second here. Typically, we play this really expensive, utterly exhausting game of medical whack-a-mole, right? You treat the heart disease, then pop. You treat the arthritis, then the neurological decline. But to truly lift this massive care burden off future generations, scientists are shifting their entire focus. They want to treat the underlying biological mechanism of aging so those individual diseases never even get a foothold in the first place.
Moving on to Section 2, the body's emergency system.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is to understand how we can actually target the mechanism of aging. We first have to look at how our cells naturally handle everyday threats. Enter the ISR, or the Integrated Stress Response. This molecular network is basically your cell's built-in emergency management system. When a cell faces a severe challenge, let's say a sudden shortage of nutrients, or maybe an attack by a viral infection, the ISR acts as the biological fire alarm. It goes off, it hits pause on all normal non-essential operations, and it helps the cell adapt and survive that immediate threat.
Which leads us to Section 3, the stress paradox. To fully appreciate this brand new study, we kind of have to look at what scientists believed up until right now. For a really long time, the old paradigm was that mild stress is actually good for longevity. Previous studies reliably showed that if you gently activate this ISR alarm in simpler organisms, we're talking yeast or tiny roundworms, they actually live longer. Even some older work in mice suggested an active stress response boosted longevity. It's basically the biological equivalent of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But the new Sheffield discovery, which was just published in the prestigious PNAS journal, completely shatters that rule. They found that suppressing the ISR, actually turning that emergency alarm off, is what extends lifespan in complex organisms.
Let's look at how they figured this out in Section 4, the fruit fly twist.
So how did they overturn all this conventional wisdom? Well, they started with tens of thousands of fruit flies. Yeah, tens of thousands. That is the massive, undeniable scale of insects this research team meticulously studied. Now, you might be wondering, why use fruit flies for something so incredibly important? Well, they were specifically chosen because their biology is surprisingly complex and actually mirrors our own cellular functions in a lot of ways. Plus, they only have a highly efficient 2-month lifespan. This makes them absolutely perfect for quickly testing the outer bounds of longevity in a complex living system.
The really crucial point here is what happened when the researchers manipulated that cellular fire alarm system we talked about earlier. Using some highly precise genetic tools, they literally tricked the fruit flies' bodies into thinking they were under constant stress. They deliberately turned up the ISR system, totally expecting it to act like a biological workout and make the flies more resilient. But it didn't. Instead, it significantly shortens the flies' lives. The complex organism simply couldn't handle being in a constant state of biological emergency.
And here, guys, here is the huge plot twist. Suppressing the ISR signal, literally silencing those cellular panic signals, allowed the flies to live much longer. And what's truly, truly fascinating is that this robust result remained completely true even when the researchers threw other challenges at them, like severely altering their diets. Just by simply turning off that cellular emergency management system, they achieved a vastly longer lifespan. Incredible, right?
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, drugging the aging process.
So what does a long-living fruit fly actually mean for human medical applications? Well, the ISR pathway isn't just some obscure biological quirk isolated to longevity studies. Not at all. As Miriam Gutz, one of the co-authors of the study, pointed out, this exact pathway is already a massive focus in both cancer research and immunology research worldwide. By understanding how to silence the stress response to extend lifespan, scientists aren't just looking at adding a few years to our lives. They're contributing to a much deeper understanding of general biology as a whole. And that shared knowledge, it has massive potential for creating incredibly effective treatments for a whole range of age-related conditions.
All of this builds into an actual actionable roadmap for the future. Here are the very clear next steps for the Sheffield team. Number 1, secure the necessary funding to continue this critical work. Then, number 2, test existing drugs that are already on the market. They want to see if they can replicate these incredible genetic results, which brings us right to step 3, pharmacologically. Basically, that means taking the genetic switch they manually flipped in the fruit flies and finding a pill or a medication that perfectly mimics that exact action in humans. The ultimate goal, step 4, is to develop accessible, everyday treatments to fundamentally slow the aging process across the global population.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question. Can we trick ourselves into living longer? We started this explainer by talking about the massive, daunting societal and economic burden of an aging population. Now, just imagine a future where a simple pharmacological anti-aging treatment, a drug that literally just tells our cellular panic buttons to stay quiet, could not only give us more years of vibrant, healthy life, but actually save society from a looming demographic collapse. It is a total paradigm shift in how we think about biology, the role of stress, and what it truly means to age gracefully. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this incredible science leaves you as fascinated and eager to learn more as I am.